Hey everyone, Tom Loria here. Welcome back to the shop. I know it's been a while since I've made a video, and I was going to make a video about making custom moldings, but something else came my way and I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to make a video about it. We're going to take a look at how I'm going to repair this poor little Beetle Cat model here. This came to me through one of my former clients. They bought it about 20 years ago, and they've had it and enjoyed it ever since, and somehow the model, I think, took a spill. The case is damaged, and the model is really not in good shape. There are many things wrong with it. Clearly, the mast is going to need to be, reinstalled. The gaff is broken. The traveler is broken. The rudder has come almost totally unshipped, and there is an enormous rip in the foredeck, and that's probably the worst of the damage. So that one's going to have to be that's going to be first on the list of repairs to make. Anyhow, I thought that this would be an interesting exercise to see how you go about dealing with these various problems. Hopefully you'll never have to do this on one of your own models, but if you do, this might give you some insight and some ideas. And if it does happen, it's not as terrible as one might think if you have a means to repair the damage and set everything back to rights. So let's take a look. We'll get started on this right away. So the first thing to be done was to clear off everything that I practically could in order to prepare the model for the rigors to come. The rig was the biggest thing that was in my way, so that was first to go. My initial and very naive thought was to save the original rigging. And if this were a big model and lots of spars and masts, and it had some greater historical significance in the wider world, that would certainly be the proper thing to do. But a Beetle Cat has 3 running lines and 1 stay. The effort involved with trying to save the original rigging would be so much greater than the effort involved with just re-rigging it. So everything, including the rudder and the anchor rod and all the other fittings, came off. It was also during this time that I realized that the tiller and the bilge pump and the boom rest, all 3 accessories that always come with the Beetle Cat models that I build, were also missing, so we have to add those to the list of items that need replacement. Now, as I said in the intro, the first thing I need to do is deal with that big tear in the foredeck. Now, in addition to the athwartship tear at the mast hole, there are 4 longitudinal cracks in the deck. Only one of these is an actual break, and fortunately it was still attached at the far end. This went back up into its original position with very little persuasion. Now, they all would still have to be reinforced, but having them line up so nicely really simplified the repair. I did a bit of cleaning up of the gash, removed any loose pieces of the deck, and squared up their edges just a bit to make fitting the top side patch a little easier. Now, I planned to make a batten that would fit on the underside of the deck. I needed this for 2 reasons. The piece would have to span the width of all 4 longitudinal cracks and also provide a stable platform for that topside patch. I made a crude, but as it turned out, very effective tool out of a piece of copper wire. I twisted some of the wire at one end for a grip and bent it into a shape that would allow me to deliver the underside batten way up into the eyes of the model. I flattened out the business end of it, and with a piece of 2-sided tape, I attached the internal batten. So here you'll see 2 views of the installation of that underside batten. Bit of glue over the whole surface, and that neat little tool delivering the batten just about where I wanted it. Now in this view, you'll see that my alignment was not quite as good as I had hoped. The glue grabbed so quickly that once it was there, I couldn't move it again. You can see me trying to move it right there, and it didn't want to move, and it left a small gap on the starboard side of the repair. We'll have to deal with that. I decided to leave the handle attached until the glue was firmly set. When it was set, I removed it. Making the top side patch was next, and this was done pretty much the way you'd expect. An oversized piece of wood progressively cut down into a small piece that eventually fits the hole you've got. And this was really just a lot of tedious try it, cut it, try it, cut it, sand it, persuade it. But you eventually do wind up with a piece that fits the hole you've got. Now I decided to use epoxy for this gluing job for two reasons. One is that since I was less than precise with my alignment of that underside batten, I needed something that would fill that gap. Epoxy will do that. The second reason was, as you'll see, I intended to mix some micro balloons with the epoxy to make a sandable body filler. This would also act to bond those longitudinal cracks in the deck that I had mentioned earlier. When everything was completely dry, I sanded off the excess, first with a rotary sander and a medium grit wheel, and then with progressively finer sanding pads. I think I went down as far as about 400 grit. At this point, rather than try and assess the repair on a dull flat surface, I put a coat of shellac on the repair spot. The sheen from the finish highlights any high or low spots and shows me exactly where further attention is needed. This way I can confine my efforts to just those areas. And there was a little bit more filling to do, and then sanding, and then sanding. There was more checking of the repair with shellac, and then more sanding. Now, after I'd feathered out the edges of the repair, and being satisfied that the contours were contiguous with the original deck camber, I gave it one last coat of shellac as a sealer, and then painting began. Now, while I've come to prefer working with acrylic paints, for this particular deck color, I've always used Humbrol colors. They're enamels, and they don't handle quite the same as either acrylics or lacquers. So I think when my supply of this paint runs out, I probably will not replace it. The paint I was using had been thinned down for airbrushing, so Humbrol's most endearing quality, good coverage with a minimum of coats, was not even something I could take advantage of here. I had to build the paint up slowly over the repaired area and let each coat dry thoroughly before applying the next. In all, I probably had to coat the repair about 7 or 8 times. I sanded lightly with a 400 grit paper about every other coat. The entire deck got a new paint job only once to harmonize the whole thing. And that really about brings us to the end of the repair of the foredeck. And this seems like a good place to bring the first part of this series to a close. Now in the next part, I'll start repairs to the rig and remake those missing pieces. So look for that second part soon. It will come soon, I promise. And if you found this information helpful, please do give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification buttons so you'll always know when I've got a new video posted. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, leave it below. I love reading what you guys have to say. Or just hop over to the website, tjloria.com, look for the contact button, and send me an email. So, until next time, thanks for watching. Break's over. Back in the shop.